Well, good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here. It's 2 after 2. My name is Kip Stahl. I'm the South Dakota Department of Health, Healthcare Associated Infections, and Antimicrobial Resistance Program Coordinator with the state of South Dakota. Thanks again for being on the call today. Today we have Sherry Fast with the South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, and also Leah Baumsberger on the call as well, who is contracted through the CDC Foundation by the South Dakota Department of Health to provide infection control assistance as well. I wanted to kick off the call and provide a little background of the meeting here. I've been with the Healthcare Associated Infections Department for about 6 years now. The previous HEI coordinator, Angela Jackley, served on the South Dakota Infection Control Council board, and she heard from other South Dakota infection preventionists about wanting to start an APIC chapter over 8 years ago. After taking over as the HEI coordinator about 5 years ago, I also heard a few people request information about starting one as well. In 2020, the South Dakota Department of Health applied for a grant from the CDC that was geared for infection control education for frontline healthcare workers. This was CDC Project First Line, and South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, with Sherry Fast as one of their workers, won the award for that funding. The objectives contain numerous infection control education initiatives, and one of them we wanted to pursue was looking into the option of starting a statewide infection control group, which could be an APIC South Dakota chapter, hence this initial meeting. The initial meeting was not meant to be inclusive, but we sent an invite to infection control staff that I had in my Rolodex, current and previous South Dakota Infection Control Council board members, licensure and certification. And I also went to the certification and infection control web page. On that web page, you can search, find a CIC, and essentially I just put in SD for South Dakota and got a list of 20 some infection control staff from South Dakota that were on the list. And essentially, if I was able to get their email, I sent them a message for that to join the meeting. Essentially, it's a large proportion of infection control staff that have been around a while, and in my mind, essential to this group being a success. As we move forward, we would absolutely invite all infection control staff in the state to the meetings and would like their involvement. Also wanted to talk a little bit about South Dakota Infection Control Council as well. I'm currently the chair of the South Dakota Infection Control Council, also known as SDICC. I know many members on the call are current members or past members, but just wanted to talk a little bit about that. SDICC is a nonprofit organization that's been around since the early 1980s. SDICC consists of a 9-person board of directors where members serve a 3-year term on the board, and the main goal of the group is to conduct and provide a yearly infection control education event to South Dakota infection preventionists. This education event is usually held yearly every October. We are currently planning the event for October 2022. SDICC board members meet monthly via an online platform to plan this event. There's a lot of questions about APIC versus SDICC, or is it a both or either question? And I've been talking to the previous years and current year's SDICC board about the possible creation of an APIC South Dakota chapter and what that would mean for SDICC. The SDICC board members do meet monthly and almost exclusively plan for the conference, which includes, securing a venue, speakers, planning, and many other items for the yearly conference. I think where the APIC and SDICC differ are that APIC chapters host quarterly meetings that, they generally host quarterly meetings that include formal chapter meetings, but also include an educational event, as well as an open forum for infection control staff to ask questions of each other and allow for a little bit more collaboration between infection preventionists and maybe even organizations. SDICC does host a yearly educational event where attendees can collaborate with other infection control staff, but with COVID, the 2020 SDICC event was canceled. The 2021 SDICC event was all remote, and the 2022 SDICC event in the planning stage, and we're trying to accommodate some sort of hybrid option so attendees could either attend in person or remote. So just kind of ultimately, infection control workers do not have a great place to collaborate with each other in a timely manner currently, which APIC South Dakota chapter could facilitate this. As far as the future of SDICC, if an APIC South Dakota chapter is created, ultimately a decision would be up to the SDICC board. I think there are a few options: SDICC and APIC working collaboratively or together, or SDICC dissolving and moving over into an APIC, or other options that we haven't thought of. But the only thing I recommended to the SDICC board was, as I stated previously, SDICC has been around since early 1980s and also has about $27,000 in our account, and just recommended that if a transition does occur, we ensure APIC is a sustainable as possible before they transfer to ensure that there continues to be a statewide infection control opportunity or group, and to be fiscally responsible for those funds in the account that have accumulated over the past few years. So that's just some background I wanted to provide as and just some thoughts that we had in our planning. And with that being said, I'll turn the call over to Sherry Fast, who has some slides, and I'll be around with any questions. To introduce Sherry, Sherry Fast is a registered nurse with over 30 years in healthcare. She is currently leading the Project First Line initiative in South Dakota. Project First Line is a CDC infection prevention and awareness project to educate frontline workers on basic infection control practices. Most recently, Sherry was the quality risk manager and infection control nurse for a local critical access hospital. Sherry also recently obtained her certification in infection control. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Sherry. Thank you.
Thanks, Kip. Well, I think Kip did a good job about just telling us an overview and why we're here today. So we'll just get right into it. This is our agenda. We're going to talk about the purpose. Why do we need a APIC chapter? And I'll go through most of this pretty quickly. Why an APIC chapter? Talk a little bit about what APIC is. The Dakota Plains chapter, which is the chapter that we're a part of under APIC. Some of the phases of establishing a new chapter, the bylaws, what we need to get started, and then we want to make sure we leave enough time for questions and conversation. So with that, the purpose, if we decide to do an APIC chapter, it grants us credible backing and support of a professional society, gives us valuable opportunities to help infection preventionists grow, develop leadership skills, network, and connect. And I think that's really important. What we've learned over the last year is that we really need these connections and these networking opportunities. So it provides ongoing member support, fosters communication, there's a lot of educational opportunities through APIC, developing our mentorship and developing new leaders in infection control. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm getting older and I want to quit someday. And I want to make sure that everyone, that we can mentor to our younger folks that are just getting into healthcare. So why do we need an APIC chapter? Probably more now than ever. One thing, the last year and a half to 2 years has taught us is that maybe we weren't all that prepared. We can use one another. We can make, vaccination clinics work if we just pull our resources and work together. So about APIC. So if you join APIC, there's 117 APIC national chapters, and they have different membership sections. So they have ambulatory care, behavioral health. They have a corporate systems section. They have a section for critical access hospitals and acute care hospitals. They have an EMS chapter, long-term care, oncology, pediatrics, home care. They also have a Veterans Affairs group. They have a lot of different educational topics that you can join. They have science into practice. They have 24/7 online access to their resources. They have a listserv that you can join, and you can pose questions that you have, and other people, team members from across the nation respond. They have the 5-second rule, the podcast. Some of us have listened to those. They have some pretty educational short podcasts that you can listen to. They have a lot of educational materials. They have tools and resources. They have something called Fireside Chats, which I've just kind of started learning about. They have the online text, which you can get, and I love that. As I was studying for my CIC exam, it was nice to have access to that online text and not have to have a big binder with me. So that's great. If you are a member, you also get a printed copy of the American Journal of Infection Control, which is nice, just comes to your house. So they have a lot of things that are important. If you are, I just want to throw this in here, if you are planning to study for your CIC exam, they also have some classes you can take and sign up, and they were very helpful in me passing my test. So they have different categories. The two that are most, I guess, important as we look forward is to be a full active member. That membership is $205. And if you sign up to be a full active member, you can vote, you can serve on committees, and you can hold offices. The same is true of a new IP. It's the same price, but you can only be in this category for 3 years, and then they expect you to be a full active member to switch that over. If you decide to join as an associate member, which is interesting because that's a little bit more money, $10 more, you can't vote and you can't serve on committees. So that's important as we go forward here in looking at things. Wanted to talk briefly about the Dakota Plains chapter. That's the group that we are a part of in South Dakota, and that is part of North Dakota, South Dakota, and Western Minnesota. They meet quarterly. Most of the people that are in the Dakota Plains chapter, from what I can tell, are from North Dakota. North Dakota holds currently all the officers for the Dakota Plains chapter too, I believe. Out of those 3 states, there's only 81 members. So not really very many members, I don't think, out of 3 states. And then they have chapter dues, which are $15. They serve a variety of facilities, and they also have a website that's housed through APIC, so you can check that out if you want. There are 4 phases, as we were researching, 4 phases to establish a new chapter. So there's an introductory phase, which is where we are right now. We're just seeing if there's interest. That takes about 6 months. Then there's the moving forward phase, which they estimate to be 6 months. The almost there phase, which is phase 3, and that's 2 to 4 months. And then we are a chapter. So we are right here. We're in the introductory phase, planning phase. And you can see I checked mark some of these we have already done. So we recruited and we organized this meeting today. So we have at least 6 to 10 people who would like to start or consider starting a chapter. We're meeting on Zoom, but if we decide to have a chapter, we'll need to decide on a platform, whether that's Zoom or Teams or GoToMeeting. We've contacted APIC already and talked about how we go about starting an APIC chapter. I've had several emails with them already and how we do this and just clarifying some of the rules that we need. And we'll go through those in a second too. We've set a date. That's what we're doing today to just assess the interest. Next steps would be to identify someone to lead the chapter establishment process. And I guess you could say that would be Kip or myself or Leah. So we could probably check mark that because we're doing that today. We need to identify or elect someone to record the minutes. And we could probably do that on this meeting as well as Nancy McDonald. Thank you, Nancy, is taking some minutes today. That's kind of that. If we establish a chapter, this is some of the other topics we'll need to talk about. An agreement. I'm going to go through the APIC's mission and vision quickly. We need a leader handbook, which we can use APIC's, they're already done. The bylaws, the templates, the new chapter application, which is not difficult. I have a copy here on my desk. We would have to come up with a name and then our own mission and vision, which we can use APIC's already. So APIC's vision is a safer world through the prevention of infection. The mission is to advance the science and practice of infection prevention and control. And again, I have there that we are a member of the Dakota Plains APIC chapter. My slide is stuck here. Go. So in the bylaws, all members must be members of APIC. So you can't be a board member without being a member of APIC, and they will check that. The national dues are determined by the APIC board. We as a group cannot exceed APIC dues, but we can decide what we want. So again, if you remember, ours are $15. Most of the chapters I looked through Most are anywhere from $15 to $25. So you can decide on that as a group. And then we have to have at least an annual meeting each fiscal year. The officers, now these are the minimum requirements to starting an APIC chapter. So we need a president, and that is a 1 to 2 year term. I'm not going to read all of this. You have it available for you. The president-elect, which assumes the role the following 2 years. Both of these are 1 to 2 year terms. We have the treasurer, which obviously we know is responsible for the financial duties and affairs of the association. That's also a 2 year term, and they are elected in the even years. So like 2022, the next time would be 2024, 26. And then the secretary is in the odd years, numbered years. Now, they did tell me at APIC that the position of secretary and treasurer can be combined if we needed to have that. The board of directors, we need at least 6 people to be on the board of directors. Now, these can be the same people. So it's a little confusing. If you look through APIC, they have an executive board. So bigger chapters have both of an executive board and a board of directors, and then their president-elect. We don't need to do that in just getting started. We just need these 4 and then 2 other offices, which is the nominating committee and an education chair. So those 6 people are the keys. I don't think I'm going to read this. The one thing I do want to point out is anybody on the board or the elected 6 people that we choose, they do need to be members of APIC for 1 year. And they do check that, I guess. So the board of directors, their duties are to establish the policies, manage the business and management, oversee committee activities, which would, as we're getting started, would primarily be education committee and just how we're going to function as an organization, authorize the official acts of the committees, approve the slate of candidates, and then have regular board meetings. The nominating committee, that's the other chair person that needs to be voted on. Again, this person has to be an active member of APIC for at least 1 year. And then we'd also need an education committee, and I don't have that in here. Then we would move to phase 2 once we decided that. Phase 2 is really just to improve, try to get some more membership. This phase can be really combined with phase 1, so it could move pretty quickly once we get those things in order. Phase 3, not a whole lot different in there. We're just waiting. We submit the application. We wait for APIC to approve it, make sure that we have our charters signed. Everybody's been approved. And then we go to phase 4. So what do we need to start? Just to sum it up, we need a president, president-elect, treasurer, secretary, a nominating committee chair, and an education committee chair. The board needs to have 2 to 6 members, which can be these same people. Then they tell us we're a chapter and we get to move forward. So yay. So I'm going to turn it over to Kip and Leah now for conversation and questions and discussion time.
Perfect. Thanks, Sherry, for that, those slides and getting that all together. Leah, any thoughts on how you wanted to move forward?
Yeah, I think the biggest discussion point, and we really wanted just to have the introduction of like what it takes to get started for a local South Dakota APIC chapter. Now, I really feel like we need to turn it over to everybody here that's on the call. As Kip introduced earlier, you all are fairly involved in infection control, have some experience. I know we have a vast majority of experience of people here that may be leaving the field soon, some people that are just coming in. But I think the biggest question is, can South Dakota sustain an APIC chapter? Given the information that you've just seen on creating a new chapter, A, and then B, just knowing that we already have kind of SDICC already, as well as the Dakota Plains chapter as well. So I really want to just open it up. Super encourage you to unmute yourself and just make this a dialogue to see how productive we think this can be and how valuable it might be for all of us. So yeah, I'll pass it on there. I know I think and I'll start just to kind of get it, my concerns out of the way is just from past professional organizations. And then I am a member of the Dakota Plains APIC chapter, and it is like pulling teeth to get people to be on these boards, to do the leadership and things like that. So with that being said, I know everybody's really burnt out. I think that this is a great opportunity. We should have more networking availability for us within infection control across the state. But do we have enough people that are willing to kind of step up to the plate? Does anybody have the time to kind of do this within their work schedule and or outside of their work schedule to to step up and be a board member and help plan this first year going forward? So open up the floor to discussion. Please give us your 2 cents. We'd appreciate it. That's what this is for.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. And I guess I would just add on the same thing. I think, if we had people coming to the meetings, I think that's the biggest thing is you have to have, essentially people come to these quarter meetings and be involved. I think we're all really busy with meetings and stuff. And sometimes it seems like the APIC meeting is kind of the first one to go if you need time to do something else. So I think what Leah shared is kind of similar concerns we have. SDICC has been around since, early 1980s. I'm not sure how that one, has been going on for so long. You're talking, 30, 40 years there. It's a little bit different where it does require a South Dakota Department of Health representative. I'm not sure if that's the key or not, but that one seemed to be go. It's not too dissimilar. We needed, 9 active members there. Obviously with this one, we would want more with that because it's more of an open dialogue type meeting, but those are the comments I had. Over.
I'll start in with a comment too, just to get people thinking. I don't know if financially, if everybody is a member of APIC. I think that probably has something to do with not that many members and organizations. So is money an issue in joining APIC and being a part of it?
This is Liz with the Bear of Sacred Heart, and I think that's my question. I think we would be able to. I mean, SDICC, we have 9 people that are on our board. So I think if APIC takes 6, I think we could find the board members. But like I just renewed my APIC. Thankfully, my organization picks up that fee, but that's $205. And then looking at different APIC chapters, they charge anywhere from, I think, $10 to $25 to be a member. So, I think that would be the biggest thing is what percentage of our infection prevention folks, especially the people who just maybe that's one of the hats that they wear, are they going to pay that $200 a year for it? Now, you do get quite a bit with that fee, but are they going to pay that? Plus, are they going to pay, whatever we say for the APIC chapter, the annual fee for the APIC chapter as well?
So this is Sue Tanner. I agree it can be an issue. I do belong to a corporate group that APIC is kind of taking over. It's a national corporate director group. And they are looking at APIC fees, and they are looking at the possibility of kind of a corporate fee, which may help some, maybe not others. But for organizations that maybe have multiple IPs, this would be an option where there would be a group fee. And I don't know how far that could be carried. So if you're an affiliate of Monument, or you're an affiliate of Sanford, or an affiliate of Vera, if you could get in on a corporate rate, and as people leave, you would still have those positions, because right now it's an individual membership. And if you have someone leave, you lose that fee. So I know there's some things in the works from the APIC point of view, knowing that the cost is prohibitive. Hopefully that will help. I think the timing of this is really good. APIC is really taking a real active role in a corporate group that I belong to, and they're really looking at a lot of things related to infection control and job roles and reporting structure. So I think this is just a really good time, the timing of this, and I would support it. It's not easy, but I would support it.
I think also regarding the fees, Sue, thank you very much for bringing that up about, especially with larger corporations. I think that's important to look at. And APIC does have like a group rate. Sherry, I don't know if you have that email from Kip that we looked into, but I think if we have if we do start this up and we have a large group of people that want to join APIC right away, they kind of will give us a deal, and we can look at those exact numbers there too. But I think that's a really good question to ask for anybody that's on this call, is will your organization pay for the APIC fee? And not only pay for the APIC fee, but I think also being able to take time out of your workday to be involved in APIC, right? A professional organization, which I think is obviously going to help you within your own facility. But I do know that, especially in some of the nursing homes and smaller facilities where nurses and infection preventionists are doing everything, will they be able to take the time as well to be involved in APIC for chapter meetings and such. So quick question, unless somebody has any. So it looks like Jimmy said, super excited about the networking aspect of this and being able to ask for new eyes and ideas on some infection control issues, which I think that's what we're all kind of hoping for with this. She's never been, or they have never been part of a chapter. So my question is, what more are we going to get from this chapter? Like, what's the purpose of starting a new one instead of joining one that is already available? And I think that's a really great question. I think that that's something that we need to look at as a state, as South Dakota, and this discussion here today, saying, should we help bulk up that Dakota Plains chapter and just, glom onto them and have more of a South Dakota representation, which is absolutely an option here? Or do we feel like we have enough within South Dakota to say, let's create our own chapter, let's make it a little bit easier? I know, so I joined the Dakota Plains chapter just during the pandemic when I started this job. And Kip told me that the APIC Dakota Plains, like pretty much all the in-person meetings were basically in North Dakota. So I know we don't love Zoom because we're just all zoomed out with everything, but that is another thing to look at, is that physical in-person networking. Do we want to have our own state versus like having the potential of, maybe joining on the Dakota Plains and just kind of continuing doing things virtually, that type of thing. So yeah, discussions there. Does anybody have anything to add to that, or questions, concerns? What are your thoughts?
This is Patty Black Tracy and from Avera, and I did just join the Dakota Plains chapter. I had done it when I signed up for the last time for APIC, and I know they meet quarterly, so I hadn't seen a whole lot from them, or maybe I just didn't really realize what it was the first time. But then I did join the past couple of meetings, and I did sign up to be a representative for them last time. And at their meeting, they were discussing that they had quite a bit of money in their funds for like education, travel reimbursements, refunding the cost if you take your CIC and pass, different things like that. So I don't know. I know that a lot of what they did talk about was North Dakota. And I thought the same exact thing. I thought, well, am I even in the right chapter? Because, they had discussed North Dakota a lot. And they said, no, this was for the 3 states, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. So I'm not saying that South Dakota shouldn't start their own chapter. I just wanted to let you know that, yeah, now they do have somebody from South Dakota, me, as a representative for them. And I don't know if that would be a conflict of interest to join this one, or if you'd be able to join both.
That's
I
a
guess
good
I didn't
question.
really know that we were going to be doing this when I did that, you know.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's yeah, not your fault at all. Well, thank you for representing South Dakota. We appreciate that in the meantime, because I know I didn't step up to the plate on those. And then yeah, Sherry, do you know at all? Would that be like could she transfer over if we do decide to move forward with the South Dakota chapter?
I don't know. You know, I'm guessing you can be a chapter member in as many as you want if you pay the fee for their
Okay.
chapter.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to give up the position and leave them high and dry either after already making that commitment. That's kind of not who I am. What I do.
Yeah, I wasn't know for sure, but I feel like I've heard some people that are located geographically in multiple areas. You can join multiple local chapters to get, you know, different education and or you know go between them too. But
So
You know,
I'm a member. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, the Dakota Plains meetings I've been on, it's been a struggle to even get people from the 3 states to be on there. Like you might have 10 or 15 people is all. And, you know, a lot of those are board members. So the other thing I worry about, I guess, and I want to be positive about this because I want it to work because I think it could be great, is how do we plan education? And if we're part of a bigger organization, it's easier to glean everybody's knowledge and capitalize on that. So.
And I was just going to add that I was a member up at North Dakota. I didn't feel that the education topics were great. And then I'm also a member of the Mile High APIC chapter, being West River. I'm able to go down when I can and attend it in person, and then also virtually. So you can be members of multiple places. But I think the education component is huge, and the difference between the South Dakota Infection Control Council, whereas that was just driven for that one-time event, versus this is an ongoing, continuing, interactive group that can come together and have those regular meetings that are pertinent to our area. Wyoming also does not have a chapter, so that might be something else that we could tap into to increase our members.
great idea, Jerry. Thank you for sharing.
This is Nick Thompson from Avera Health, and I'm on the SCICC board as well. But I'm a big proponent of South Dakota getting their own chapter. I know I haven't been a part of the North Dakota chapter, or the Dakota Plains chapter, excuse me, just because it's all North Dakota based, and you know, geographically, I don't networking is harder too. I'm not necessarily going to work with these people closely. You know, you can ask them questions, but I think South Dakota just has its own geographic regulatory items that can be South Dakota specific that I think would be pertinent for us having our own chapter. I also, you know, point out there are, you know, long-term care will have some new regs coming that's going to really formalize the need of a long-term care IP formally for each facility. We've got a lot of facilities in South Dakota that are going to have staff that are getting education regularly. And CBIC is creating a new long-term care certification kind of alongside the CIC certification. And so I think we're going to have a lot of people coming on board that are going to be looking for education opportunities and be looking for ways to learn and advance in their careers in the next couple of years. And this could be a big boon for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you sharing that. I think, so what I'm hearing in general from individuals who are chatting and or speaking up is that it sounds like we're in favor of creating a South Dakota chapter to try to be a little bit more self-contained here geographically, as well as, for the population that we serve. Looks like there is an option to be part of more than one chapter if we need to. Or I love the idea of also reaching out to Wyoming to kind of help bring them in as well. I think we need to do that just as rural states in general if we look forward to doing this. So that might be an option when we elect board members and try to recruit people. So I'm wondering if, so I want to open it up. We're about 40 minutes into this. Want to be cognizant of everybody's time. If anybody has any questions or concerns, I'd like to, bring them forward now. And if not, then I think what we could do is our next step would either be right now to just do a vote to move forward with this. And we can do this in one of two ways. If we feel like we need some more time to think about this, or to look at, maybe look at the APIC website, check with your employers to see if you could even get APIC membership, that type of thing. We'd be happy to send out like an email survey afterwards. Or if, I don't know what you guys think, if we want to vote on it moving forward just now today. But before we do that, any other questions or concerns that people have that you would be willing to voice?
Yeah, I would say if we do have enough to move forward, I'd say then we probably need to have a one big formal thing to include, all infection control practitioners if we're gonna go that way. So if thoughts on that? A more broad invitation for all infection control staff in the state to do
I guess I have just one thing. If we are really thinking this is something we want to do, could people email either you, Kip, or me or Leah and say, I'm willing to serve in this capacity, in this role. I've been a member, so we have an idea of who's willing to serve in these roles. Or are we not there yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think we'd need the initial saying, yeah, we good, and we'd have enough, and then I think probably open it up to everybody, because it'd be an election process of the board positions, and then at that point, we'd want to open to statewide, so let everybody get a chance to fill those positions. So I'm not sure how best to gauge the move forward with that or not. I guess I would defer for you guys.
So Lisa and Diane are asking, basically, would this replace SDICC in South Dakota? And if it did, would it also replace that 1.5 days of education that's currently put on by SDICC? And I think the answer is yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kip. But
Well, I think it's a good question. I think ultimately, I'm the chair. I would think that personally, and I can't speak for the board about voting to dissolve SDIC or not, I think I would like to have APIC up and going personally, make sure we're established, make sure we have meetings going, all those before we went and do that chance. And I think there is an opportunity if there's enough people to serve on both, that we could have keep SDICC working collaboratively with APIC and SDIC, as long as we have people, it's 9 people over here and some people over here. The SDIC could potentially continue to work side by side with the APIC chapter to provide that yearly education piece. It'd just be if we can get enough people to serve both boards, but ultimately the board would have to decide what they wanted to do.
So I'm sorry, I'm late to the table. This is Dawn Tomac. I had another meeting that conflicted, and I know in the past we discussed having joining APIC, and one of the concerns was at that time we had limited funding for a while there. SDICC almost closed at one point when I was years ago, because we didn't have enough money, and that has changed since then. There is more money in the cash, and than there has been in the past. There was some concerns that we would be spending money on lawyer fees to incorporate, or however that works in APIC. I'm not exactly sure. And you probably discussed that component of it. And they really wanted to make sure we were still getting good quality education that was close to home. Now we have more virtual options, and we actually did the whole SDICC virtual, but what you miss is the networking. and what you learn from the networking. So even if, and I know there's a lot of APIC chapters that have their own annual education. And I think that even though we can do it virtual, as soon as we can start meeting face to face, I think that's better because you build that connection with people, and then they learn from each other and they know who to talk to because they met them before, you know? And so that's one component. And I think that's the concern why we didn't go with it years ago. I think the question though I have is, I know there's funds in SDICC. I'm not sure what that is right now, but where does that go? Does that roll into the chapter? You know, I would assume you'd have to have some sort of formal vote. We've always had our formal votes at the annual meeting. So, and you'd have to look at how our bylaws are set up. So that's one component of that too. But it is helpful to have APIC as, what would you call it, a guiding. And I've sat on APIC national committees and done all sorts of things with APIC that you can learn so much from the people that you meet that way too. So, you know, I think those are some questions that I would need answered. Not that that deters us from going down the route, but we'd have to figure out what happens with that component. And maybe you address that. And I'm sorry that I'm late.
Yeah, I think this is Nick again. I think I'd add to that, in my view anyway, I think SCICC and APIC chapter kind of serve two different purposes too. You know, SCICC is there to put on that annual conference. That's Education, South Dakota Civic, IP, right? I see an APIC chapter as more of a networking opportunity that also provides education, but that we're meeting more regularly. We're able to see these people more often, talk to them more often, and also have those resources that APIC provides with that as well. And so I guess just throwing out there, I don't know that we would have to do either way. I think that there is room for both, and they serve two different objectives.
Another question from Lisa in the chat is, would it be possible for board members for SDICC to serve a dual role as board members for APIC? And I guess that would really be up to SDICC, you know, kind of in the end, if APIC gets up and going. So I've not been a part of SDICC, so Kip, I defer to you on that question.
Yeah, I looked at the documents for SDIC that kind of governs this, and there's no one, you know, about having to board, you know, positions or anything. There's nothing in the rules that say you couldn't.
Hi guys, this is Tammy Rames. And first of all, Don, I agree with you. One of the things that I would also ask though is how much of what we have now from SDICC can be moved over or used as a template for the other work that we need to do as far as our policies and guidelines. Can we take that along with us? Can that help? So we're not building from the ground up? Or is APIC asking us to do very specific things that we would have to start from scratch?
We don't have to start from scratch. We have a lot of templates already built according to their national guidelines. So I think we could just roll over a lot of things and just fill it out with our name and, you know, once it's approved. I don't think we'd have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, thank you, Sherry.
I have one more thing. I find it interesting to keep it separate, because one of the reasons with SDICC is they didn't have to purchase that membership. And it is, you know, I paid for my own this year. My last couple of years, I've paid for my own membership into APIC, and it is, you know, quite a bit of money, but I've also benefited quite a bit from APIC, especially when I was on a guidelines committee, which I encourage people to do those groups. You can gain so much information from that and actually be cutting edge, be ahead of everybody else. But keeping them separate, we could still meet the needs of some of those where their facilities don't pay for an APIC membership. They would still have education available. I don't know. I'm kind of both ways. I'm kind of for, if we're going to do it, just bite the bullet and get a vote and roll it all over. But I'm also for keeping that education, because the education was why I mean, that's why SDICC is there. It's just to educate our IPs. So, you know, it's a tough one, I guess, for that part of it.
Is there a way that we could offer scholarships for those that the organization isn't paying for it, at least initially with the startup?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jerry. I think initially we did secure, I have to look again here, but a possibility of doing that mass enrollment, at least for like a year coverage, to cover the APIC fee at a discounted rate for X number, maybe 50 to 100 people, to get them at least in that yearly 1 year covered. And then after that, we could always look again, depending on grant funding.
You know, APIC has some really good letters that you can do to your administration as well, encouraging like why they should cover it. So that's something that we could potentially create too for people that are having a hard time having their organization cover it, in addition to scholarships or what have you.
I think that would be great. Again, this is Tammy. I'm really concerned about some of our small hospitals being able to come up with the payments or long-term care. That was one of the drawing points for SDICC, because these guys could come to an educational meeting and not have a problem with having their facilities pay that amount because it was so small.
Can somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but can't people still come to the meetings, but they just can't vote?
Oh, okay.
For
I believe
APIC,
that's the case, right, for APIC.
I've never heard of that, I guess.
When I've been down at the Colorado meetings, there's been plenty of people that have been at the meetings, getting the education, getting the CEUs, but they're not actually members yet. They're kind of trying it out or whatever.
That would be something, that's a really great idea to look into from the APIC side, because if we could increase, you know, just participation in general and or, you know, have that networking aspect available, I think it would help get new members in the future, and B, it would make our education hopefully more relevant for everybody. So that's something we can definitely look into, and we'll put that on our notes.
Great.
Okay, that would be great. One of the things that has always been so wonderful about SDICC, which I would like to see transferred over into the education component if we go to APIC, is that we have great educational programs that cover all areas where people could work. And I would like to see that continue, because that is absolutely one of the big positives, is that we find out all sorts of stuff that we wouldn't have known.
Awesome. So we have about 6 minutes. One last call for any other discussion points or thoughts that people would like to see. Good stuff in the chat too. I appreciate anybody, everybody that's kind of putting their thoughts in there as well. Kind of looking at SDICC in concurrence with APIC. So I think that's a really good question to look at in the future. So I think our next steps will be to Sherry and I can put together a little survey that just has kind of an official voting, I think, thing to say, like, do we have a mass, you know, a majority of people that were here on this meeting that would be in favor of moving it forward. And then, like Kip said, we need to really span this, you know, to more individuals across the state. And then we can start looking at maybe some board members if we do decide to move forward. I think the SDICC along a further discussion between anybody that's involved in SDICC and your next meeting, and kind of as we move forward with APIC, whether or not this should be dissolved or not. I don't think it's necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kip, but I don't think that's necessarily a decision that y'all have to make right away. Given the concerns, I think the funding opportunities is another concern, and making sure that people have access to APIC, especially for some of these smaller facilities. So I appreciate the commentary on that and looking at how SDICC can kind of serve in different capacity versus APIC. But you know, maybe that's something that we can kind of look at further down the road rather than having to like make a decision right now as we move forward with APIC too. As long as there's no kind of conflict of interest, if anybody wants to, you know, get on board members and things like that. So yeah, so I think that would be, would maybe like a little survey that would be emailed out to everybody be okay, just to kind of get a formal number on yays or nays if nobody had the chance to speak up. Does that sound good? And then opening it up more broadly in the future if we are, okay, awesome. And seeing, yes, that's a good idea in the chat.
Do we know how many IPs we have in the state?
There's only like 20 some.
It's a good question. I mean, I think certified infection control people in the state, I think I looked on the CIC website, high 20s, but ultimately a lot of non-certified infection control people all over, but I don't think we have a hard number on that.
I can get that. They just emailed me that as I passed my test. I just said I wanted to try to connect with other certified infection preventionists going forward. And she couldn't give me a list of where they worked or their contact, but she gave me names. And I think there's like 22 or 3. I can look for sure. It's on an email I have. So really not very many.
Yeah, if you look at the non-certified ones, there's lots of them out there and they're all looking for support.
Yeah, you think
Yes.
every nursing home has to have one. I think we have over 100 nursing homes, right, Kip, in the state. Every, Joint Commission hospitals have to have one.
Indian
most critical
Health.
access have them. Indian Health has them. So I mean, and the fact that we have, probably upwards of a couple hundred people that are formally, informally in that role, and we only have 22 that are certified, I think is a huge gap that we need to thin down.
Yep.
And this
Even
could
the
help
federal,
with that.
even the federal prison has to have, I've seen IP positions open for the federal prison system as well.
I will tell you, as just having got my results, that test is hard and it will require people. I mean, if facilities want to improve or get somebody from their staff on, they have to allow them time to study because it is not something that you can just go take.
I always recommend a study group where
Yeah.
people present to each other.
Yeah, I think that's going to be another kind of barrier for those small, like Jimmy is saying too. It's just, let's see, somebody said in the chat, Kelly, yeah, small facility person here. Time and money are always thin when you're a small independent group. So, kind of thinking of ways to support those facilities in South Dakota, not only for CIC but involvement in APIC too. So. Awesome. Well, we're getting here on the hour. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And so thank you so much. This is recorded. We'll go ahead and have Kip email it out to everybody as well so that we can, so that if you need to watch it again, review some content, or if there's anybody else that you would like to see it, I think that was a great idea. Our next steps will be to look at some of those questions and concerns that you all have brought forward from these meeting minutes. And I think to maybe send a survey, an official survey that just kind of gets a bigger like count on yay or nay moving forward with South Dakota APIC chapter. But what I'm hearing from so far is that yes, everybody would like to go there, at least for now. Not really sure what to do with the SDICC piece of it, I think at this point, but I don't think we need to make a decision on any of that right away by any means. We should also look at funding opportunities, and maybe what we can do in that next survey email is also give some more broad information about chapter dues. And I would like to see if people who are on this meeting, and I'll probably include this on the survey, if you are part of an organization, you don't have an APIC membership yet, if you'd be willing to kind of talk to your supervisor and see if that would even be a possibility at this point. I think that's kind of a good thing to explore. And then the next meeting we'll have will really be much more broad, and we'll try to advertise it out to a lot more individuals within the state. And obviously we rely on every one of you to kind of network with people that you know as well. So Yeah, all right. Well, I think with that being said, we're at an hour here. So thank you all so much for coming. Be on the lookout for an email. And if you have any questions, once again, Sherry has our information up there. So we're kind of exploring this opportunity, and let us know if you need anything. So thank you all very much. Take care.
Thank you.